We'll go ahead and get started, everybody. So thank you for joining us this afternoon. We're excited to kick off our webinar. My name is Amber Baines. I'm the VP of Retail Performance here at Rick's Software. And my role is to focus on creating ways for brands and retailers to work together to be more connected through systems and sharing data. I'm very excited to lead today's webinar panel. If you have any questions as we go along, please feel free to use your chat box and we will save some time at the end to answer those questions. So joining me are two very special guests who have a lot of experience in this industry to kind of have a conversation about why retailer and brand relationships are so important and what you can do to help strengthen those relationships. So first I have Justin Porter, who is the Chief Merchandise Officer for the Athletic Annex and Fleet Feet in Nashville. Thank you, Justin, for being here. And then I have Ray Pugsley from Potomac River Running, who is the owner there. We are excited to have both of you guys joining this webinar and to give your experience and opinions on working with your brand partners. So I don't think it'll come as any surprise for anybody that the retail industry is changing all around us. Consumers are more connected now than ever. They have more information and they have more choices. It's really important for retailers to know what consumers are doing, when they're buying, what they're buying, how much they're spending. And the best way to be connected with your consumers is to be connected with your brands so that you're sharing this information and you can work together because brands want to know the same information as well. So Justin, let's start with you. As the retail industry has evolved, has this affected or changed the ways you're working with your brand partners?
Yeah, a ton. We say that, retail has never moved this fast before. So I think the faster we get information back and forth from the brands, the quicker we can react to trends, whether it be apparel, footwear, accessories. It just speeds up how fast we communicate and how frequently we have communicated.
How often do you talk with your brands?
Some daily, some weekly, monthly, depends on how frequent they want to talk to me. But yeah, it's a lot. I mean, email, text, phone calls, it just moves faster.
And are all those conversations the same or are they a little different?
No, they're all different. We operate on everybody can see their numbers and everybody else's numbers. So the data shapes the conversations a lot of the times.
And Ray, what is your opinion on this? As the retail industry continues to change, how has this changed the relationships you have with your brand partners?
Well, we have definitely through the years begun sharing more data, or we adopted data sharing pretty early, and we just feel that is, as Justin said, with things moving so quickly, the more information we can share with our vendors, the more we can stay on top of what our customers need. And we like to think that we can make good decisions on our own all the time, but there's lots of times when we make a miss and we don't necessarily know we make a miss. And by sharing data, our vendors know if there's something we need to adjust, whether that's something that we're overbought in or whether or not we don't have something that is selling well somewhere else. And that open line of communication can allow us to be more reactive and make adjustments more quickly.
And how often do you talk with your brand partners?
We talk with our brand partners really on a regular basis. Probably certainly every couple of weeks we touch base, if not sooner, depending on the season and what products have recently dropped. But that constant level of communication, open lines of communication, do allow us to make those adjustments more quickly. And another thing that's makes data even more important, as some of the brands have kind of restructured how they interact with us, from changing tech reps moving from one position to another. Reps change. Generally, our point of contact is our rep, but as that changes, there can be inconsistencies. What is consistent is data. And if we have some relationship with the brands where someone is looking at our data and we're sharing, then it's less stressful when there is a change in the tech rep or the regular rep.
So as your business ebbs and flows, how does this change what you need from the brands? Ray, I'll start with you.
What we need from the brands is we want a collaboration where we'll share data with them, and in return they will begin to trust that we are doing our best with their brand to represent their brand and to sell their brand. And when something isn't going as sunshiny as we would like, they will work with us to help make adjustments. So on one hand, we'll bring in an appropriate amount of product from a brand, whatever we agree on, and we'll bring that in, and we'll do our best with that product. When it doesn't work well, we have a wrong color or something isn't fitting properly, and whatever the case may be, then the brands see that there's been a change in our turn rate or change in our in kind of our pattern with them, and they see that. And ideally, they're seeing that with other stores that they share data with, and they say, aha, we see that there's something in the market that is less favorable for this product. And then we've developed a relationship where they'll make adjustments for us. Sometimes that means changing future orders. Sometimes that means swapping product out. The rearrangement is going to be different. But because they can see that data, and they're not just taking our word for it that we weren't doing it. We don't have to just say, oh, it's not working right now. They can see that it's not working for some particular product, and therefore we can make those adjustments that help keep our bottom line in good shape.
Justin, do you feel like your relationship with your brands are similar, and by sharing that information, they're willing to help buy into more inventory or help you out on the back end?
Yeah, I think we always talk about having a plan up front. I think it's something we forget a lot of times when we come and, oh, great, we're going to see new product. But when we come to the table with these brands, we always have a forecast in mind for this season's going to look like this. And here are our goals. And we talk through those, make sure we're on the same page. Those goals, we don't always get there. And so that's the conversation. If we're looking at the same metrics, which is sell-through data, I always will try to make sure we're speaking the same language, and that's sell-through data. I don't care what you sold in last year. You shouldn't care what you sold in last year. As long as we're talking the same language and having the same conversation about our goals, if we don't hit those goals, we tried together, because I can go back and say, yep, we supported this product. We averaged this many pairs on hand in this period. And so it wasn't an inventory level issue. Okay, what was the next problem? Was it a product fit issue? Okay, yep, we're hearing that elsewhere. Okay, well, let's get out of that. And so that allows us to have very clear conversation. And there's no smoke and mirrors games. There's no, hey, this didn't work. Well, why didn't it work? So the numbers are right there. So you guys are always on the same page.
I think that's such a good point to talk about having a plan up front. And so you can agree on the plan, so there's no surprises in the back end.
Yep.
So is there anything that has changed that you're expecting from your brands, or that they're expecting from you? Or have you had a pretty consistent relationship over the past few years?
I think Ray touched on it earlier. There's always turnover. And so look, we try to hold every rep accountable. I always joke, it's like, oh, here we go, training a new sales rep, which it happens. It's like, okay, but we kind of, as they come in, here's how we like to do business. We're an open book. Ask us these questions. You want this data? Yep. Let's set you up on the monthly report from Rick's. You want a weekly report? We've got one brand who wants a weekly report by SKU by color. That's fine. But we really just try to dive in and make sure that we're sharing everything we can possibly share.
And what are the positive effects you see when you share that information with them?
Well, we always say, we have these great marketing ideas, and we like to try to think outside the box, but you can really judge if it works or not. And so by having the data to show if that project worked or not, you're able to go back the next time and say, hey, yep, we had success here. We didn't have success here. If you have the more successes you have based on your data, the easier it is to go back to brands and get more support going forward.
That's great. And Ray, what are some of the positive impacts in your business that you've seen by sharing this information with your brand partners?
Two that come to mind right away are that we are more willing to bring in some unique products that maybe we wouldn't typically have brought in. There'll be something that our rep will say, man, we think this is really going to be a big hit, and it's not traditionally what we would bring in, but we'll take a chance on it because we developed this relationship over time where they know that if we take a chance on it and they see what the turn rate is on that product, they see that if it's not working, we're confident they're confident that we'll do our best to try to sell that product, and then we're confident in turn that they will take it back and swap it out for something that we can sell if it doesn't work. So that gives us, because we've developed that relationship, that gives us the confidence to take some more chances that we didn't back in the old days. So taking those chances is fun because it gives our customers something different to look at as well. And when it works, it's really cool. Another thing is that when you have something unfortunate like 2 years ago when we had whatever 30 something inches of snow and we had our 8 doors, all of them closed for 4 straight days, they can see that we didn't sell anything for 4 days, and we could get extended dating. Obviously, that was an extreme case where that was in the news, but nonetheless, there are situations where sometimes we may want to ask for an extension on a large bill that we ordered, and we have data to back up why an extension might make sense. And because we've proven ourselves to be trustworthy to them, and they share our data, we can do that and with confidence, and they know that we'll be back on track real soon.
That's great. So Justin, do you have a strategy you can share with us in terms of creating a more open and collaborative relationship with your brand partners?
Yeah, I think Ray touched on it as we kind of work through this data, and we've got reps who see multiple markets, and we really try to force collaboration. And when they come in to show product or they have an idea, pick up the phone, call, or when you come in and say, hey, I think this, you touched on it, this is going to be a hot product. Let's try it and see what happens. Okay, well, if it's a hot product, we're not going to just buy it in one SKU, one color. We need to blow it out, do a display. Okay, it's going to be in this area of the store for this amount of time. Here's the sell-through percentage we're looking at in this period. So I think by sharing all this data, it actually brings some excitement to the rep force that comes in, because they know they can play around with some stuff. Apparel's, one of those things where we step outside the box a lot, and they can really come in and say, hey, I thought of this piece for you and this piece. Okay, let's do it in this area. So it really allows brands to come in and say, okay, let's try this. Let's try this. We don't always say yes. We've done we have a Santa Claus come to one of our locations, and literally it was Brooks who did it, helped with it, and Griswold the whole house. Kids came in, had pictures taken. It's like, okay, we'll try it. We'll try anything, and it was a great turnout. So those type of things, and that was all our Brooks reps said, hey, why don't we do this? So that type of stuff, they like to come in and they like to have a say, because it gives them ownership of the business as well. So.
Do you feel like it's you bringing the idea of sharing information with your brands, or are your brands asking you to share the information?
I think both. I think we get it from both parties. Sometimes, I tend to force brands to share more data so I can kind of see what's working out there. Mm-hmm. And I'll always ask, okay, is there a hot color that you guys are seeing on e-com that wasn't placed in store? We tend to do a lot of our business in 2 colorways, as do most brands. But is that 3rd, 4th colorway that had great sell-through here in weeks 1 and 2 that I need to go chase quickly before it's gone? And so that's the type of stuff that I push these brands on. Hey, how's that new color working? What's going on? So we can shift and move. So I think we kind of force it both ways, or I love it when a rep calls and says, hey, that new color is moving quick, get into this now. I think it goes both ways, as long as you have that relationship and you kind of, sharing data helps you kind of have better conversations. And to be honest, it helps the relationship out. So I think it's both ways.
Ray, is there any reason or any concerns you have when you're sharing this information with the brands?
I've been thinking, and over the past, we started with Rick's in 2011, and I think we started data sharing in earnest probably about 5 years ago. And over those 5 years, I can't think of a single example where I say, gosh, I wish I had not shared that data. Mm-hmm. One thing that I should probably say right now is that there may be some people on this webinar that may not actually understand technically what we mean by data sharing. And who hasn't done that before, what we're typically talking about is having a way that the brands can see our sales data, our inventory data, just their brands. That Rick's can be set up in such a way that New Balance can look into our system and see everything about New Balance. Nike can look in and see Nike, Brooks, etc. So they can't see anybody else's data, just their own, but they can see all of their own data. And that's kind of what, when I'm talking about data sharing, I'm talking about opening up that book and letting them see. So when we say something like they can see whether or not a product is turning, that's not us reporting it to them and then taking our word for it. They can go in at any time and pull that data and see how it's doing. And that's the trust that we have with the vendors, and then they have in turn with us to allow us to do some of these things. One example of, I'll say, earning this respect that we had with some of our brands was that we had to, a number of years ago, before we really started understanding the power of the rich reporting, we were way over inventory. We had so much more inventory than we needed, and we had to take that move to reduce our inventory. And when we did that, a lot of our reps freaked out because all of a sudden our buys were way lower. And what are you doing? What are you doing? And we said, well, look at the data. You don't want to see turns of 1.5, 2, do you? That's not good for you. That's not good for us. So once we kind of taught them what we were doing and showed them our roadmap, and they could see the numbers increasing as we changed our buys, eventually we got to that happy place where the turns were good. We were selling all their product. We weren't making returns. And then they knew that we knew what we were doing. And that trust really opened up and gave us a lot of opportunities. So it really is a combination of knowing what you have at your fingertips with Rick's, little plug for Rick's there, combined with developing that trust with your vendors. I'm not sure if I answered the question you initially asked, but
No, that's very insightful. I mean, we really appreciate the real life stories and how you're using it. And I think that's a great point. So I would say, if you don't mind sharing, what data points do you share with your brands? What do you think is the most important? Justin touched on sell-through earlier, the margins. I mean, where do you find the most benefit of sharing? What data points?
Well, definitely for us, I think it's, well, sell-through, turn, basically the same thing. I would agree that that's the big thing. Certainly, profit margin is good because they can see, how much we need to price match, and anytime we have to go off price, that will hit that profit margin, and we can use that as a conversation point. If since we do price match, and we need to keep up with what's going on out in the bigger world, that's useful. And of course, if a model changes and it doesn't fit well, and then we have to unload it at the end of the model run, that'll hit the profit margin. So the various profit margin is one, but turn I think is our most important one for adjusting futures, adjusting not only current futures that are coming in, but projected orders going forward.
Great. So I'll just jump in one more time and say, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to just type those in and we'll get to them when we're wrapping up. So Justin, I would turn it back to you and say, are you sharing similar metrics? And earlier you talked about how you guys kind of establish plans up front and kind of align on where you want the business to go. Are you aligning on what the expectation for your margins or your sell-throughs are? What kind of conversations are those?
Yeah. I think we align everything. I mean, we go to as far with some brands and to model out the on-hand inventory by month, by SKU, by size. We go that deep sometimes because some of them are asking for it now. So that's my own fault, but we are going that deep with some of these guys. But yeah, margin plans up front, sell through, overall sells you by unit, dollar if you want. But we have those conversations, and then they can check in monthly. Ray talked about revisions. We still do revisions, and there should be no surprise when I send you a revision, on the 10th of the month after you just got your first of the month reports and ask me why I'm revising. Because you should have already known that why there was a revision here, why there wasn't here. But we set out that plan way in advance. It's just part of doing business. If you're not setting that plan, you're leaving a lot of margin on the table. Markdowns, all that fun stuff. But when we send everything to our brands, and you talked about it earlier, what Ray was sending, we actually also send a very top level category data to every brand that they can see where they stack up against the other brands. That way, when there's a question of, well, why can't you buy more of us and take more risk here? It's like, well, why would I throw this away when I'm making more money with this brand? They're turning this a little bit faster. Why would I not put more money towards them? And so it changes the conversation a little bit.
So you're comfortable sharing with a brand what other brands are doing in your store?
Yep. And it's a very high, you'll only see very, very top level. You're not gonna be able to break it down by SKU. It's just, hey, last month, Brooks did this, New Balance did this, Saucony did this, the total units, dollars, margin, profit. I mean, it's your sales analysis report. They get to see that. And so from those brands, it's fun because it drives a little competition because some of these reps are very competitive. Well, why'd we slide? What did we do? And it's one of those conversations. All right, tech reps are coming in now. They're going to come and hang out this weekend. Like it drives those type of conversations. I like it when they're competitive because it means they're touching staff more, which is great.
Right. So then do you feel like you're offering up the goals, the brands are offering up the goals, or you kind of meet in the middle and say, hey, we want to be at this margin, and they say, well, let's realistically plan it here, and you kind of work together?
Yeah, I try to drive those because I always want bigger discounts. I know Ray won't argue with that. But yeah, so I try to drive that most of the time. There's, our old New Balance rep, he liked to push. He's like, well, you can grow this because of, here's what you've seen, here's what you've done. It's like, yeah, okay. Well, then that's our new goal then. So I'm open to pushback at any point in time. But especially if those guys are studying their numbers because they can push back, and that's great. I like that. So
Ray, how about for you? Do you feel like you're bringing the metrics to the table, or they're offering up kind of goals, or do you meet in the middle?
It's kind of both. Actually, jumping back to touch on one of your previous questions into who initiates the data sharing. Back in the beginning, a couple of our brands came to us and offered up the idea. It wasn't something that had really crossed our mind as an opportunity to do from a deep level. Obviously, the top level sharing that Justin just talked about, we've done all the way along, but the deeper dive into the data, we didn't even know was really something to be done, and that was brought to us by a couple of our brands. But then once we found out about it and we saw the power in it, we have driven that conversation with the others and basically said, look, if you want to be profitable with us and maximize what you do with us, you need to share data, look at our data, and work with us. So it's gone both ways. And then in terms of what are we bringing what are we sharing now, and who's initiating those goals? We definitely meet in the middle there, and the same way that Justin said, we have ideas of which brands are more profitable, and yeah, that's something that the brands need to know. When you add up discounts, shipping costs, ease of doing business, availability late in the product cycle, so that we can continue selling the products. How much the product gets discounted when it goes off map. All those things add together to create a profitability picture with each brand, and we do want the other brands to know where they stack up, because that competition is good for us, and we allows us to set those goals. And we'll set goals with other brands. Sometimes the goals are with a brand that we want to get access to more inventory of something that we know we're going to sell a lot of, and they try to skew what's sometimes a special allocated product. We get more of that ourselves. Sometimes the conversation is that a brand is not real profitable for us, and here's the goal: we want to be more profitable with you, so we can be comfortable bringing your product out to the customers as much as possible. So we do set those goals a lot of the times, and they'll have their own reasons for adjusting those goals, and it's a conversation.
That's great. So I would throw it out to everybody attending on the webinar. If you do have any questions that we haven't gotten to, please feel free to send those in. We'd be happy to kind of chop up any other questions that you may have. Otherwise, we will wrap it up. So I'll give Justin one more opportunity. Is there anything else that you would like to chime in that I didn't kind of hit on that's important with your relationships with your brands?
I would just say my biggest one right now is our big push is getting everybody talking about sell-through data versus sell-in data. That's our big push with brands now. It's been my big push for years, but the more we can get them to talk in the same language, sell-through data versus sell-in data, that's great.
Okay, great. Ray, how about you?
I encourage everybody to consider sharing data. It really helps all of our channel as a whole. Sharing data is the best way to dial in the product such that there isn't too much left at the end that needs to go on sale and drag everybody's prices down, or the price that we need to sell things down. That we have gotten to a place which maybe some of you are we're about what I'm about to describe. You may already be there, but we weren't, and we've moved to a place where we have good turns and strong profit margins and very little returns at the end, or very little extra product to discount or to request RAs for at the end. It's this great place where we say that we think we're very efficient and we're very comfortable with our efficiency because we don't have a lot of old product at the end of the life cycle. And you can get to that point. And if all of us were at that point, there'd be so much less, not only would there be less product out there that needs to be fire sold, whatever that word would be, but also it allows us to scoop up extra product from the brands so that they don't have to go dump it somewhere as well. So all of us will be in a better place if we can get to the point where we're comfortable sharing data with our brands. And I'll also say that if you are trying to have an honest relationship with your vendors, I don't see any downside to sharing. And if you're not, doing things behind the scenes that you say, oh gosh, this isn't maybe the right way to handle this brand, this vendor, this product, then you got nothing to hide. And if you got nothing to hide, and then that honest relationship will help everybody.
That's great. Thank you. So I'd say, Justin, Ray, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time and your insight and your expertise in this area. Thank you, everybody who attended, and have an amazing afternoon.